This is The Point, news from noise, daily market call presented by Kattan Ferretti Financial. I'm your CEO, Brad Roth, and I look forward to having a daily discussion with you over the topics that we present in this note every single morning. So without further ado, The Point.
Good morning, listeners of The Point. Cameron, fire away, buddy. It's after a Penn's Cup win, so just get right into the news.
Yes,
let's plow through this sucker.
All righty, sounds good. Looking in the United States, the U.S. markets were lower in pre-market trading ahead of a week focused on comments and actions of the Federal Reserve, as well as consumer and producer price data later in the week. There was heavy selling in the U.S. tech stocks on Friday afternoon. In our daily note today, we'll have a summary of Hedgeye's insight into the so-called FANG stocks that lead markets lower. Google's lawyers and lobbyists are hunkering down in Brussels, preparing for what may be a record EU antitrust fine. The Wall Street Journal over the weekend began seeking more clarity on what the U.S. expects, on when the U.S. expects to raise the debt ceiling. As bond yields remain low, the debt ranges on as to when a sell-off may ensue, and General Electric makes a change at the CEO position. The White House also looks to unveil a workforce development plan led by Ivanka Trump. Looking outside the United States, there are numerous equity analysts and strategies at firms like BlackRock Inc., Morgan Stanley, and Deutsche Bank AG have encouraged investors to overweight European stocks because of robust growth expectations and relatively high valuations in U.S. equities. Vanguard says to remain in U.S. equities. Mario Draghi said the Euro region still isn't generating enough inflation, overshadowing improved prospects for the economy that led officials to upgrade their growth assessment. Some of Theresa May's most senior ministers are working to moderate her plans for a hard Brexit, even suggesting the UK could remain in Europe's single market and customs union, as the Prime Minister fights to stay in power. Near final results from France's first-round parliamentary elections showed President Emmanuel Macron's new movement winning by a large margin and set to land a huge majority in the final round vote. Reports in the Chinese press speculated that the country's commerce ministry will substantially reduce restrictions on foreign access to the Chinese market. New Zealand's Institute of Economic Research cut New Zealand's GDP forecast for the fiscal year of 16 and 17 to 3% from 3.4%. North Korea's official news agency, KCNA, announced that the country is close to test firing a long-range missile. And lastly, Hong Kong property names like New World Development, Sino-Land, Link-Right, and SHK Properties and Hang Lung Properties have lost between 1.1 and 1.7%. Now, Bobby, on Friday we had some big news coming out as there was a huge tech sell-off.
Yeah, they're actually the big news on Friday is that there was a sell-off, and as you start to watch the sell-off on Friday, there wasn't much news to accompany it or headlines or anything. It was very focused sell-off in the FANG stocks. So FANG is an acronym they use for Facebook, Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. What's the ends? NVIDIA and Amazon. So these are like the big name tech stocks that really led the market higher and led tech to be the top performing sector and outperform any returns we've seen. Tech at one point was up 20% on the year, the XLK. So when you see selling is concentrated just in those names and not more broadly across the tech sector. And then the next thing you look at when there isn't too much headline news is, well, is there any volume here, right? Is this just late in the afternoon on a Friday in the summertime and, there's one seller out there somewhere and kind of nobody's paying attention type sell-off? Or is this a heavy volume? There's a lot going on. It was heavy volume. There was a lot going on. One of the things that there was a flash crash at one point, which lasted, I think, like literally 0.3 to 0.7 seconds, where prices, made like a 6% correction. And a lot of times that's telling you there's one big seller out there. Then you dig a little deeper, and you found out that Goldman had put out a note earlier in the day talking about how there's low volatility in these names and to be very careful around them and whatnot, which is actually really interesting because volatility in those names isn't quite as low as Goldman kind of headlined it. So it was an interesting time for Goldman to put out that number. You always have to be speculative if it was one of their customers who was a big buyer and they wanted to see some volume on the sell side to help facilitate the buy in the name. But it didn't appear to be anything fundamental with the companies, and it's also why we're incredibly lucky to have a relationship with research analysts like we have at Hedgeye. Because it's almost like they kind of predicted this thing. Their early morning note on Friday, which we summarize in our note today, was entirely looking at the FANG stocks and not predicting that there was going to be a sell-off or anything like that, but it was basically saying, like, hey, there's talk that around volatility that's too low in these names, and they put out some real statistics that kind of said, that's a little bit overstated, and it was almost like giving you the perfect prep and practice to say, if something like this happens over the next couple of weeks, use this as an opportunity to buy. Well, it didn't take a couple of weeks, it took a couple of hours. So I definitely urge you guys to read our little recap of what Hedgeye said if you go into the news. But other than that, this week, it's all about the Fed, right? What is the Fed going to say? Are they going to raise rates? That's pretty much the market is pricing that in as 100% or near chance that they're raising rates at the end of their 2-day meeting. But more importantly, what are they going to say about their own balance sheet? Are they going to start selling off some of their assets sooner or later? How much are they paying attention to asset markets? How much are they paying attention to wage inflation? Are they going to raise one more time this year or 2 more times this year? What are they looking for to raise interest rates later this year? So we'll stay as close and focused on that as possible. But what do you have in sports today? Or Pittsburgh has another championship maybe or something?
I do. Working our way up to that. Ryan Blaney got his first win at Pocono, joining Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Austin Dillon for their first NASCAR wins this season in their career, actually. Daniel Berger won his second straight FedEx St. Jude Classic as the PGA Tour now shifts to the U.S. Open. But on a much bigger scale, we had a more important repeat winner last night. Pittsburgh Penguins defeated the Predators 2-0 after a late goal by Hornquist with just 95 seconds to go. That was a thrilling game. Good to see the Penguins bring home a second straight cup, maybe even go for a third next year. So.
Yeah, I had no idea that the record was 4 straight cups. I always thought 2 was the record, but I guess in the early 80s, in 80 through 83, there were 4 straight cups for the Islanders. So, I guess we need about 3 more here. Then Pittsburgh will feel settled.
They got a shot with these young guys looking good. Getzel's looking good. Sheary. So much young talent. So
yeah, and I also saw that Pittsburgh is has the most major sports titles for a town with only 3 sports teams. So.
City of Champions.
Yeah,
maybe.
City of Champions. Let's do this thing. All right. Thanks a lot. All right, we'll talk to you all later. We'll see you tomorrow. This was The Point for Monday, June 12th. And be well, all.